Right, so we were the quality group, and we had a very rich discussion, and there's some crossover between what Lynn has said and what we discussed in our group too. I suppose the first thing that struck us was that all universities aren't the same, and that in some universities in Europe, adult education is just taking its first steps, was the way it was described. And it's not part of the university infrastructure, which is a problem in those universities. So, for example, in some universities, the level of participation in part-time education has dropped significantly in the last couple of years, from a high of about 800 students to a low of about 50 in recent years. So it's very problematic for them how they're going to promote adult education, and increase participation is a big issue. The other issue is the conventional academic learning is very high in the hierarchy of learning and knowledge creation, and there's a huge gap between it and what's considered knowledge and learning. All other forms of learning are way down the spectrum, and adult education programs can sometimes be seen as peripheral to the core work of a university, not central. So that's a huge issue. So we agreed then that these were issues at stake, problems that had to be dealt with. But we also recognise that quality assurance procedures in universities have created a lot of data, and that there are very good data collecting mechanisms in most universities now. And the challenge for us was to use that data to promote the value of adult education and use it as part of our research, a sort of baseline of research. So we could use both quantitative data, but we do agree with Bernie that many offices are filled with qualitative data too that could be utilised and written up to promote adult education and promote best practice in adult education. So we discussed for some time the idea of the insider research, and again the work that Yvonne mentioned this morning around the parents and how they were used as researchers was considered. And we said that one of the issues that we saw, again if you think of Bernie's work on the community education, was this issue of fear, that people are a little bit nervous about their area of work being, I suppose, investigated by external groups, and that can be a problem. But insider research can throw up good research, but it's also, there's something about that Foucault idea of going in to view it, to be a gazer, looking in and taking data out and utilising it, and whether or not that data will measure up to what's known, in conventional academic circles as being good research. So there is an issue around that. We were very interested in the role of clubs, and we thought that that was a very important way of creating a link between learners and research and practice, because they very often could mediate maybe in some way through that. So we discussed an association for part-time students and how clubs might have a role in building that kind of an association. So we were thinking of something that was quite transient and loose, not something that was kind of had strict rules and regulations about it, but something that could like pop up and just melt away when the use of the club was finished. We had a long discussion about dissemination and distribution and promoting what we do, and in the end we saw it all as part of a wheel. So what we thought was that inside the middle of the wheel you have, it's not RIP by the way, it's just RP, which is researching practitioners, and at the outside we have this loose green, maybe untidy practitioner research that isn't exactly core to the work but is happening all the time. And there are many links spokes on that wheel. One of them is distribution, one of them is dissemination. Data, there's plenty of data between those two that needs to be either used in the outside here, or could be brought into the inside. So there are links, and we really do need to start making this wheel roll. And one of the things that has happened is that all of these things up until recently, up until now, have been all separate. So you think of dissemination, that's one block. You think of recognition of prior learning, that's another block. You think of raising awareness, that's another one. You think of research and data, that's another one. But we need to see them as interlinked, as part of a chain, a part of a continuum, and that they can't be separated. If they are separated, they will remain disconnected. So we need to try and find ways to interconnect this more and to create this wheel of movement in adult education, I suppose give it some fuel through this interconnectedness to make it start working better than it has done heretofore. And there was a time in our history, and this is something that, again, Bernie mentioned this morning and came up at our meeting, there was a time in the history of adult education when it was a movement. So it was very much a wheel, and sometimes we forget that movement was so strong, and maybe this is a good opportunity for us to start to move it again and make it into a fresh neo-movement for the future. So thank you very much.